Hi everyone, it's Ash from FPL Hints, here with an exclusive interview with the world number one in FPL. Before we begin, if you're able to like, share and subscribe, that will be greatly appreciated. Here is Tom Hadley, world number one in FPL. How's it going, Tom?
I'm really good, thanks. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite.
You're welcome. World number one, top of the tree. How does it feel?
Well, it's been a weird 24 hours for me. I've literally got like first place because I've been hovering around for a while and managed to get the first place for the first time this season, and it's kind of surreal. Uh, it's quite late on in the season as well, so you got to make sure I don't think too much about it. But whilst it's there, you got to enjoy it, haven't you?
Absolutely. And you've been on a remarkable journey. I've got your rank on screen there, where you've effectively been in the top 100 since game week 13, and then obviously top like 5 since game week 26. So it's been a very patient yet remarkable ascent up the top of the tree. So, fair play to you. And you got into the top 1K, in fact, quite early on as well. So, look, all I can say is congratulations. And I guess we could end the chat there if I'm perfectly honest. No, I'm joking.
Oh, thank you very
Um,
much.
but yeah, before we get into like chat about fantasy Premier League, your journey in particular, I can't really start the chat without asking you about your beloved Wigan Athletic. And do you wish that you had this FPL team before 2015 so that you could have captained Hugo Rodallega during a double game week, perhaps?
I see. I think about that, and then I realise that because I'm so biased towards Wigan, uh, I feel like if I was back then playing fantasy, I would base all my decisions slightly differently because I didn't want to jinx us, or I didn't want to captain someone who was playing against us, something like that. So obviously, I've never not been in that position with Wigan in the Premier League, and I don't think it'll be there for a while. So I think
No.
I'm all right. It's just obviously I would like to have owned some Wigan players. It's not that they're very good or anything, but like I said, if you top 100, I doubt there's many top 100 people with Wigan players in the fantasy team back then.
No, fair enough. I've got fond memories of Wigan in Fantasy Premier League. Ali Al Habsi was a
Yeah,
mainstay of the sub one like
Amir
place.
Zaki as well at the start of the
Amir
season,
Zaki, he was
2008.
he was a legend for that like window.
I bet.
Absolutely. And bit of I mentioned Hugo Rodallega. Another like bit of a curveball one. Sean Maloney during the
Uh,
2011-2012 season. And if I began producing content from the 2011-2012 season, and I'm pretty certain
yeah,
I wrote an article about Sean Maloney as well. So random. There we go. I think he got into coaching eventually, but fair
I
play
think
to him.
he manages us now.
Oh, he manages Wigan Athletic.
Yeah,
Wow. Well, full circle then. Brilliant.
so yes,
So
literally, he's one of
yeah,
my favourite players. So
yeah. He's also a legend for me in Championship, well, Football Manager 2005 when I think he was at Celtic then, and
yeah, I think
yeah, it was a bit of a revelation. So yeah, I've got fond memories of Wigan, and let's hope that it's not a long absence from the Premier League, despite the
oh, I hope
situation that
so.
they're in. Yeah. So with this team, look, you began playing from the 15-16 season. I guess my first question is, what was it that first got you into playing Fantasy Premier League?
It was my friends mainly. They were pushing me to play for a while. I never really saw. I didn't see fantasy football like I see it now. I thought it was just a. I didn't see how good it was back then. So I was always reluctant to play it, especially when I was watching the football and playing football and all that. But I started playing with my friends around that time quite casually. We made um, little mess about leagues, a bit like the draft league where because
Yeah,
there was only four of us, we could kind of customize it, sort of thing. Have players that only one of us could have, sort of thing. So all of our teams were different. So it was quite a weird start for me. And then I only started playing seriously a few years later. I think it was 2017, and like with no restrictions, I started playing the full season. And after that, I was like, entering leagues left, right, and centre because I really got into it.
Yeah, and it
Yeah,
has
there you
been.
go.
I was going to say it's been quite a remarkable journey because I know you got like 32k and 37k, but like this has truly been your breakthrough season on many levels, I guess. And I wanted to ask, what was the moment for you from when you became from being a casual manager to becoming an engaged FPL manager?
I think it. Well, I joined a little mini league. It was only like 30 people, and but that was like the be all end all for me. I made sure I tried to win that, and so it became less casual when I was really competitive trying to win that instead of just playing against my mates for fun. And I think some seasons I'd sort of peter off towards the end if I wasn't in the running, So
Yeah.
I'd always base my season off how well I was doing in that league. So if I was winning it, I would hardcore, be really serious trying to keep it. I feel like um, when you're at the top quite early on, it's so much easier to keep your position.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about mini leagues sort of thing. When you're when you've got the team that everyone wants, it's so
Yes.
much easier just to like keep them off rather than chasing. So whenever I got into a position where I was winning the league,
Hmm.
I just kind of play safe throughout the season. And obviously this year it's kind of escalated a bit further than
Absolutely.
that.
And I'm glad you've said that because I have this mantra in FPL that a head start, so I beg your pardon, a good start is a head start in FPL. And it's
Oh,
something that
absolutely.
many would disagree, but I feel that due to the number of managers that now play the game, that it really gives you a massive edge. And like you said, that you'd rather have the players that everyone else wants rather than the
Yeah.
other way around. And I talked about your best finishes there, 37k and 32k from a few years ago, and of course,
Hmm.
550k from last season. The really big thing I want to ask really is what have you done differently from previous seasons to this season?
Well, for me, I was referring back to what you just said in that point. I think the start of the season for me is like the game changer. It, not having a good start doesn't mean that um, it's all over. You can easily make up the ranks and catch up. It's not impossible. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that if you get that curve right, you hit your own curve right at the start of the seasons, which I was like the first 3 weeks. I don't mean top 100 straight away. That's not the point. It's like
Yeah.
you want to be in that ballpark. You want to be because I think after about 3 game weeks in the season, you can sort of figure out how the season's where it's going. With the players and who's standing out a little bit. You get quite a bit of data from the season, and you want to be hitting those players that are doing well early, or you want to be even if it means wildcarding early. I think I'd suggest that having that team that everybody wants early doors is really like quite a force to not be able to catch. If you know what I mean. And I got
Absolutely.
quite lucky this season with it. I got a team from the start, and then I made a few good transfers, and I think it's stood me in good stead because it's one thing saying that the players that are highly owned are kind of boring and whatnot, but they're usually highly owned for a reason, aren't they? They're usually they're usually
Yes.
the best assets. So if you've got a team with highly owned players quite low down the ranks, you're going to struggle to catch. But if you've got a team with highly owned players at the top, you're going to be hard to catch from them because they usually score the most points. If you know what I mean.
I couldn't agree more. And you mentioned the word boring, right? And like boring is actually not a bad word in my from my perspective in FPL, because to be boring is to be successful. Like you look at the elite managers across the years, and they might say that oh they have this cutting edge, but for the most part, it's really about anticipating the template that you have mentioned as well. So it's good to know that that's really validating the approach
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of the elite managers take, whereby they want to get ahead of the curve from that side of things. And yeah, you'll have your standard picks, but there's a big difference between having that template a week or two before it gets established than a week or two after it has been established, and that makes like for significant
Well,
rank gains
especially at
as
the
well.
start of the season, the price is a lot more volatile. You know, the price
Yes,
changes because everyone's playing, so
exactly.
you miss out on players so quickly. So I think it swings massively at the start, and you don't necessarily need to have all the players. There was a few. I remember I had John Stones in my game week 1 team. I needed that. I wanted that City defender for
Yeah,
that price, and he didn't play the first 2 weeks, and he got clean sheets both matches. And I could have had another City defender who got the clean sheets. So it's like
yeah,
I still had to. The team wasn't perfect, but it was hitting those trends, and pretty much a safe team to start off with. I don't think I
yeah.
try not to be too maverick at the start of the season because you don't really know what's going to happen.
I agree with that as well. And again, what you've said there validates with what a lot of the elite managers do as well. Again, I'm not trying to influence you with what the elite managers do, but it's hearing what you're saying matches up with their general style of play as well, from my experience. And I'm just like looking at what the data that I've seen. And you mentioned game week 1. That was an absolute disaster for me, whereby I acted upon certain last minute leaks, got De Bruyne in. He obviously then got injured, and I wasn't aware that Gabriel was going to be benched. Had him in, and that really messed up my start. Probably one of the worst like starts in FPL in recent years, because I had to make transfers that I wouldn't have otherwise made, and then I had a incident whereby I was trying to get Mohamed Salah in early on in one of the, I think, game week 3, and that got mucked up as well. So yeah, I didn't have the best of starts, and it's good that you had a sensible approach, and it paid off from being
Well, that
170k.
was just unlucky, really, wasn't it for you? I mean, you can't.
Yeah,
Some things you can't predict. You still have to. There's always the luck element, and it could have been those 50-50 decisions that go wrong, and it can
you're right.
set you back. And it's like if it sets you back early on, it's really hard to come back from, especially if like a player goes from like 11 mil to 10.9. That's it's so hard to like get those prices at the start. It's basically worth more than 1.1, isn't it? Because
Absolutely.
everyone's in block figures. So
Yeah. And look, when it comes to FPL, I'm always of the opinion that you have to make your own luck, and luck is a very important part of the game. But at the same time, you have to speculate to accumulate, and that's exactly what you did in those early game weeks.
yeah,
So
so I think the
it paid off.
notable point for me was the wild card I did in game week 7. I think it was because I I had a bad week and I came off a bad week and I knew I needed to change it, so
Yeah.
I acted straight away. And one of the players I got in was Watkins for his 23 points against Brighton. That
Ah,
was the week I
yes.
transferred him in, and
Ah, brilliant.
it's not that I predicted him scoring that many. It was that he was getting little points here and there, and people actually sold him.
Yeah.
And I think um, I just felt like it was only a matter of time before he really started scoring more points.
And you're right, like that for him was like a launching pad to the start of a successful season, and he's right up there. Ollie Watkins could still potentially win the Golden Boot, so you got that like anticipation spot on. In terms of influence, are you influenced by FPL content in particular, or the FPL community echo chamber that we so often hear about when making your decisions? And if so, to what extent does that have a part to play in your approach?
Uh, it's a tricky one because I really like reading about football and I really like engaging with people who play fantasy football. I think there's so much good content on the platforms now, where you can see. I'm very interested to see what people are doing, but there's always a case where you read too much of it. There's a fear of missing out on players. You see that everyone on the
Yes,
dog's transferring in a player on
yes,
Twitter, and you feel like that the whole world's getting him, and it's not actually the case. So, as much as I like to read everything that you see, I really always make my own decisions and do transfers that my team benefits. I think uh, sometimes it's going against the grain. It feels like it's um, only going to go wrong, but actually, like, for example, I think it was a few weeks back when everyone transferred Hwang in before the Sheffield game at
Yeah, I
home,
remember that.
and everyone transferred him in, and little did I know that everyone in the top 100 transferred him in as well. I didn't expect that to happen, but my team didn't benefit from the transfer. I had a good midfield. I didn't need to do it, but I transferred Aït-Nouri in instead,
Oh,
and
brilliant.
he got his assist and clean sheet against Sheffield, and like that benefited my team, but benefited me. I was like, I watched that game and I saw that everyone had Hwang, and it was scary, but it worked out for me in the end.
Did you get Ait-Nouri knowing that he had become like an out of position player, or he hadn't been shifted into that advanced role at that point?
Well, see, it was before he actually got the more advanced role, but he was picking up some really good positions in games. Um, I do like to see those sort of. I'm a big lover of stats. I always go on who scored and check, see like key passes and things like this. And I've noticed that he was getting there without scoring and without assisting or whatever. And
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to work that as well as it has done, because obviously he's been flying at the minute. And I've got really lucky with him playing left wing. I think it
Yeah.
was the other day. But like
Scored
again,
a
it was
goal.
all based the look was based off an educated decision that ended up turning out pretty good for me.
It
So
worked, and it is, like you've said, going against the grain is also part and parcel of FPL as well, and it is the difference between those with a good rank and those with an exceptional rank, really. So your personal judgment really worked in your favour, considering everyone else went for Huang instead. And
yeah, I
talking
mean,
of,
you don't want to do it too much. You don't want to go against the grain too much.
oh no, no, of
I
course
don't
not.
think.
Like you've got you've got the template, but then it is those I guess when it comes to that jigsaw, it's just those final pieces really that
Yeah.
you'll then possibly look at the value add in terms of where you can get that extra traction from. But yeah, you're right. Generally, with how you've played, we'll come on to captaincy as well in a
Mm-hmm.
moment. But like, it's been very safe and it's worked in your favour immensely. And I think the key takeaway I've had so far, looking at your data, is that you've constantly gone ahead of the curve, and literally looking at that uh, image right there, it's worked in your
Mm-hmm.
favor because, like, more often than not, you've been way ahead of the FPL average. And I think there's only been maybe two instances where you were slightly below it. So it has worked in your favor without a shadow of a doubt. And I mentioned personal judgment. Are you influenced in any way by, let's say, algorithms, automation, models, or do you err more towards personal judgment and instinct when it comes to FPL decision making?
Well, the algorithms that you see on these pages are so clever, and I think that they all base their predictions from stats, and stats is like the ballpark. You can sort of predict certain trends, with players. Either it's the positioning or the chances they're creating, and I feel like there's a lot of good information there. But I think with football, especially, there's a lot of for me, like the just watching the matches, you can't get some of the feel for the players when you've got computers, making decisions that based off just the stats. And I think it the right blend is a bit of both. I think you can
Hmm.
um, you can tell, just with like the flow of a game, whether or not someone is, like everyone says it, they look lively or something like that. I think, or they've had a few close, like they put a cross into the box and someone's nearly got it a few times, like little things like that. Doesn't count as actually a stat, but they're
Yeah,
doing the right things. And Doherty was one of them, for Luton. I watched him for a while, and I got him when he really hit the points.
brilliant.
And they were really fun to watch. And part of it was my enjoyment of just watching them go down that side every game, whipping balls in. Like for a
Yeah.
defender, that was amazing. And I think one of the big games for me was when they played Chelsea at home, and I think he got two assists. And
Yeah,
he literally like scoring every time he went down his side. And I think that's one thing that, because I enjoyed watching him so much, you know, as like a, it looks like he gets to the edge of your seat, you know, like they're gonna score every time he gets that ball. I think that's something that
absolutely.
I like to base some decisions off, is what looks like, you know, like someone's going to create something every game.
Absolutely. And like often you get people who are, I don't use these terms, analytics FC and grass FC. It's clear in your instance, you like a hybrid and you've got a good mixture there and it's definitely worked in your favor with giving you a balanced approach.
Yeah, you need both. I think it's hard to get a blend of everything, because you do need a bit of luck to go your way, but also you kind of have to. What I base my decisions off, you know, educated decisions. You sort of think, um, you know, they may not do something straight away, but the decision making's good, and like you've got to remain patient with the process, so that you think that that player over a course of a small period is going to do something at some point.
Absolutely. And talking of like processes and another side of the game in FPL, captaincy. Um, for captaincy, I can see you've generally gone for like safe and popular picks. So, is it safe to say, pardon the pun, that you've been risk averse with the armband?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not a big lover of the actual captaincy in fantasy football.
Yeah,
It's just because the swings can be so monumental. I think the team in general, you know, your starting 11 or whatever, that can swing enough. Like the whole game itself is quite not unpredictable, but there's a lot of elements to it. And I think being safe with the captaincy, at least it knows that that aspect of my game is fairly secure, especially in the top 100. Like picking someone will all fall together. A bit like Salah this week, everyone fell together. Uh, so I didn't want to chance that. Obviously, the gains are massive if you pull out a really good captain, and if you chase him, then that's a lot better approach. But for me, I was always trying to remain safe with the captaincy, and then get the team a bit more tweaked around that, and then that'll hopefully get the points.
and it certainly has worked in your favor there. And again, I don't want to put influence to your side, but you validated the approaches that many elite managers take, whereby when it comes to captaincy, it's something that generally isn't risked on a like game week to game week basis. But of course, when there is upside, then they do
Yeah,
certainly switch it around. Again, I don't want to use this. My reference point when it comes to managers in your situation is those elite managers, and that's the data that I've studied. And as it's technically speaking, I am well classified in the elite 1,000 of some of these tables. So I'm not. I'm just talking from my own experience and from what I've seen, and
yeah,
it's
definitely.
good to see that that's echoed in your approach there as well. Of course, with it being much more better than many others.
And I mean,
Um,
that's sorry, that's why you pay the money for Salah and Haaland, isn't it?
absolutely.
You pay the money because you know that they're consistently getting points. So you know why would you know temptingly risk missing out on their points? And it's quite a safe bet that one of them will do something every week.
Absolutely. And yeah, they are that price for a reason. Now, coming on to like the season itself, we know it's like a marathon in many respects. Have you employed any particular coping mechanisms to sustain your focus in the upper echelons of the FPL rankings?
It's easy to say that it's not stressful, but every to be honest, at the top, it's one little decision and it's kind of game over. That's why going without Haaland for a couple of weeks is unbelievably risky. But it's paid off for me so far, but it's not going to pay off forever. I think
Absolutely.
that's a big factor in what stresses me out. Is you know,
Mm.
these big players with the, you know, when you go on live FPL and it says that 83% of them have got him and I've not got him. and it's like it's yeah, it's trying to balance composing because there's still a long way to go, and lots can happen between now and the end of the season. I just try and focus on doing the right thing at the minute, not being too hasty, not trying to fear of missing out on some other players that the top 100 have or whatever, and just stick with the plan, stick with the strategy that I've had for a bit, and that's all I can do. I can't um, make predict that I'm going to stay first. Obviously, the plan is to just keep it through well-educated decisions, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and you mentioned percentages there, and you mentioned a well-known FPL tracking website. So effective ownership does come into your mode of thinking then to some extent.
Oh, it has to, yeah. I know. Yeah, I like to see in the top 100. I like to check out what that sort of trend is because it's like a mini league in itself. And
Absolutely.
if this week just gone, I was the only one in I think like the top 7 that had Foden, and that really
Wow.
it was like Foden v Haaland for me, and obviously I won that really
Yeah.
really luckily, and so like all them that had Foden kind of lost out on that, and then the ones that were below them that did have him kind of gained up. So I do monitor. I think you know it was weird for me because when I got Salah for the Brighton game, and I made a really early transfer for that. I don't know me because it was the international break, so I got him right at the start of the international break, and I hate doing that, but I knew I needed to because of the
Quite
value in
choices.
my team. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that Brighton game, he was a sort of semi-differential around the top, and he could have gone huge.
He
And
had the
then,
record most number of shots he's ever had in a Premier League game and
yeah,
only ends up with just one goal. So
I know
annoying.
it was so close. And then obviously for the Sheffield game, every single one of them's got him now. So I
Yeah.
do look at it. You're trying to hit it because obviously they're all buying him after you. So at least I got in there first. Now the ball's in my court to make sure I'm trying to set the trends all the time, but it's hard.
Exactly. And look, you mentioned trends there. You are a trend setter in many respects, having been in the top 10 since game week 25 and been on the podium ever since effectively. And you are now the world number 1. With less than 2 months to go now, are you playing FPL to win the game outright, or are you looking to secure a good FPL rank? What's your thinking on that, Tom?
I mean, I'd be foolish to say that I'm not playing to win it because anyone in this position surely would have the sort of mindset on it. But I know too well that so many things can happen, and
Yeah.
yeah, I can't think about that much. If you ask me if I'm still here in game week 37, then I'll start saying, right, let's go for it. But I just got to try and keep up there, try and keep the sort of top spots at bay, and then it's all to play for, isn't it? At the end, I think I can't set sights too much, but obviously I've got to think about it a little bit. I've got to, it's natural to be in this position and kind of question if I can do it or not.
And you've got a 15-point lead at the top of the tree, which it's not a gigantic buffer, but that's still a buffer nonetheless, at least going into the next game week. And just if I can just chuck a penny in here as well, that around this time last year, I interviewed the world number 1 in FPL. He then went on to win FPL. It's Ali Jahangirov from Azerbaijan.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'm not saying anything about omens and signs, but I hope
Oh,
that that sets
hopefully,
you well.
lucky charm for me.
We'll see. I guess we'll see what happens. Uh, I also wanted to ask, what one piece of advice would you give to any FPL manager that's never been ranked inside the top 1K?
I'd say that referring back to what we were talking about before, I think if I was to say one thing, it would be try and not be too different at the start of the game. I think
Yes.
that's the foundations of doing well, even if it's players that you don't necessarily want to have. Sometimes I think
Yes.
you need quite a safe team to start off with, because you never know what's going to happen at the start of the season. Like, things can go out the door straight away, and I think you've got to be willing to scrap up the team early doors if you need to,
Yes.
just to make sure that you're on the right path. I think ruling out a game week 3 wild card just because you feel like you should need it further down the line, that can really like set you back miles if you don't do it. I think
Yeah.
like game week 1 and 2 you can sort of see signs, and then 3, if your team's really not there, I think don't be afraid to use that wild card early doors, because then you want to be ahead of everyone. You want to be on top. Like, you want to be in that field of players that everyone's going to want, and because there's no way of losing then if you get those players in. If they don't do as well as you think, then at least everyone's kind of got them. You know what I mean? So try and build up patiently. And obviously, if you do have a bad start, and it's not impossible to not catch up, if you know what I mean. But I think it's a lot easier for me personally. I find being there quite early doors, I can just manage the situation a lot easier. I've got those players early. I've got the players that people want, and it's just harder to catch me up. Like, I've never really gone down since I hit that top 100. I think that's the main reason of that is because I kind of kept faith in those high performing players that people sometimes shun upon because they're own so much.
Yeah. You've stuck with your guns, and it's worked in your favor. What I find remarkable about your journey this season is how sensible you've been. And like you mentioned that word boring early on. I have this mantra that I mentioned: to be boring is to be successful in FPL. And a lot of these ploys and tactics that you've essentially used are ones that are commonly used by the elite managers who often finish in the top 5k or 10k. The only difference is you've found that extra edge to be in the top 100, to be in the top 10, to be on the podium, and to be world number 1. So it's clearly worked in your favor, and it's demonstrated by your performance on a week by week basis. So I'm delighted to see someone who's played the game in this pragmatic way, and I endorse a pragmatic approach to FPL, and like that is the reality of FPL. But in this case, what you've done is not only embodied that, but you've gone above and beyond. Of course, we've talked about luck, which has massively played in your favor as well, but you've combined the pragmatism, the skill, and the luck to be world number 1. Is that a fair assessment, Tom, or am I reading too much into that?
Yeah, I think obviously I've had quite a few lucky breaks,
Yeah.
and things can happen in fantasy. Like, you can have 1 week where half your team gets injured. That's possible, and obviously I've had to. Everyone has the problems in the team, but it's just trying to manage it sensibly. I have taken hits as well.
Yeah.
There's this thing saying that hits is a bad thing. I didn't take one for a while, but when it needs to happen, it can really help the team out. I see it as an investment sometimes. It's not just a 1 week hit. If
No.
the player's gonna then change your team. Like, once you've done that hit and your team's straight, then you can start looking ahead. Instead of trying to manage getting that player in over time, you might miss out on other options. Because you're trying to get them for free, you might then miss out on another opportunity, and then you're behind. So sometimes a hit can help you get ahead, and I think that's an overlooked strategy. And obviously, the stats that I look at, players tend to match the stats over time. So it's not just a one match thing. You might transfer someone in and he blanks straight away in a fixture that you expect him to, and then the next game he'll go and play someone away from home like City and score twice. Sometimes the fixtures don't necessarily do it justice. Like Son in particular, for me,
Oh yeah.
was one of them players. Like, I think he blanked 3 times in a row, and quite a lot of people sold him. And then he played City away, and obviously scored that goal, an own goal, and I think he got an assist as well. But that was
Yeah.
massive for my rank. And then a couple of weeks later, he got 17 against Newcastle.
Yeah.
Which like people thought were hard fixtures, but the stats were there, and he tends to do well against those better teams. Actually, he's really good on the break. So that was
Fixture
my thinking. Yeah. So yeah, I think steady approach for me. I try and stay steady throughout the whole season and not too hasty.
Yeah. No, it's slow and steady wins the race, to use like a famous saying. And look, apart from that, I wanted to say thank you so much for your time that you've taken out today in sharing your journey and your experiences. Any final words before you head off, Tom?
No, I just like to thanks for the invite, and it's been a pleasure to speak to you.
You're welcome.
Hopefully, people will learn maybe 1 or 2 things, and it's an interesting position to be in right now. So I'm just hopeful that it can carry on, because
Absolutely.
it's a chance, I suppose.
Absolutely. And I want to just say this, that whatever happens, Tom, after this game week, you will be an FPL legend. You will always be known as Tom Hadley, FPL World Number 1. No one can take that away from you. And I just also want to say, I hope your mini league rivals and your top 10 aren't listening into this as well. But really, like, play, you just carry on. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And clearly, from game week 1 till now, you've had hardly any like dips in the road. And on screen there, I like you get like the grey dash. You're so high up that sometimes your rank doesn't even budge as well. Which, like, again, some people never get that grey dash in their FPL career because they're not ranked that high. So yeah, just keep going, and just wishing you all the best, mate.
Oh, thank you very much. Cheers.
You're welcome. Apart from that, for those that have tuned in, if you're able to like, share, and subscribe, that will be greatly appreciated. In this segment, I'll do a quick review of Game Week 31, discuss team selection options for Game Week 32, as well as a quick preview of Game Week 32 matches, and I'll cap it off with best FPL captaincy options from my polling data, and we'll end it there. So, firstly, Game Week 31, I needed a bumper game week, and thankfully it delivered. The average was 46 points, and I ended up with 79 points. And as you'll see shortly, had I slightly tweaked my captaincy, and had it not been so obvious, I could have ended up on 98 or even 100 points. So 531k rank. It's quite rare for me to even break into the top 1 million on a game weekly basis nowadays. So I'm very pleased with that. Onto the goalkeeping situation. Dubravka, I guess I'm getting the price that I paid for him, and disappointed that he conceded quite late in the match against Everton. But then again, can't really say much else with all the injuries that Newcastle have been riddled with of late. Onto the defence. Zabani, another clean sheet. Didn't even know who he was at the start of March, so very pleased with that. Van Dijk, again, another one whereby I was kind of hoping for a clean sheet against Sheffield United at Anfield, but it is what it is. And then Gabriel chipped in with a clean sheet against Luton Town. And it was quite interesting. I think Luton Town were on this streak of 18 games of scoring, and then Arsenal put that to a halt. So fairly pleased with that. But then again, a lot of the elite FPL managers I've seen have got the double Arsenal clean sheet, so probably lost out slightly there. And then onto the midfield. Here's where all the points pretty much came from. So Palmer and Garnacho, first of all, in that Chelsea against United match, I picked up 5 goals. Palmer, who's been in sensational form, and there's no really not much else for me to say with him in particular. I luckily got him in for a -8 last week, and that in itself, 35 points has paid off handsomely. He, of course, got the haul against Newcastle prior to the blank game week 29 as well. And had it not been for all these goals that he's been scoring, of course, a lot of them have been penalties, Chelsea probably in the relegation zone. And with Garnacho, I bought him in, I think, a few weeks prior as well. And that was really just as a make weight purchase. But noticed that he was quietly picking up like points here and there. Like he'd blank a few matches, get a haul, and then that pattern would continue. And I thought, well, he's become such an important player for United. And at his price point, it just made sense to get him in. And I benefited with his 9-point tally in double game week 28 when he was a bench boost option. Benched him last week. I also benched him against Chelsea, but then Haaland and the auto sub came into play. And auto sub has really gone against me for this season. And thankfully, it actually worked in my favour. So I'm not going to really moan about that as a luck factor. And then onto the other midfielders. Foden, absolutely sensational. Of course, rotation was a concern, especially with City's jam-packed fixture rush, as has been the case for Arsenal as well. And we saw Saka getting completely rested. Same with Haaland. Luckily, Foden survived the cull. Big disappointment with Salah and the captaincy against Sheffield United. Would have expected at least some sort of fancy return, but of course Salah had to get subbed off early as well, and we all captained him. So even if he did haul, there wouldn't have been a massive benefit there. And then on to the strikers, Muniz, Solanke, blanks from both. I'm hoping that with their price points, I'd get return every now and then. And then onto the bench, Kaminsky with a 2-pointer against Arsenal. Haaland, of course, 0 points, didn't even come off the bench, which was a relief. Otherwise, I'd be effectively on a -13 here, and the green arrow would be dented somewhat. Kirkes and Doughty make up the subs. Now, in terms of like how my team has done recently, it's been somewhat of a journey actually. I was like 992k in game week 26, 919k in game week 27, and I just decided to take affirmative action. I did a very early wild card. I did the triple captain on Haaland, I guess when a lot of people did it. Did the bench boost as well in double game week 28, and that's why I had a significant shift actually from game week 27 to 28, and then 29, 30, and 31, I've gradually picked up. So literally cut my rank in half in a matter of weeks since the start of March to the beginning of April. So I'm very pleased with that. And I'm probably not going to be in the top 100k. I think I'm like 72 points off the pace. I've got no more chips left. So I will be taking more risks. I'll be doing more unorthodox like selections in the hope that I can go against the grain and benefit from rotation and a busy schedule. But as it stands, I'm very pleased with the progress. There was a point where I wasn't even looking at my overall rank. It simply wasn't budging. It was like 800, 900k. So where I'm at right now, I know that I need to maximize the momentum with no chips. I will be taking hits, no doubt. But I look at the double game weeks that we've got coming up. We've got double game week 34, and I could probably field like 9, 10, even 11 players if I really wanted to. And then there's the penultimate game weeks, double game week as well. So it'll be interesting how I factor that one in. But it's something that is no doubt going to focus on my team selection for game week 32. So short turnaround time. And with that, it's 11 a.m. deadline on Saturday. As it stands for my bus team, I've got Dubravka in goal against Fulham. I think that's a fairly like tricky match. Fulham have been fairly resolute at home, and I'd be surprised if he kept a clean sheet, especially with the form that Fulham have been in collectively this season. But got no other option. It's either him or Kaminsky. Onto the defence. Tricky fixtures for both Van Dijk and Gabriel from a clean sheet perspective. But again, it's not as if I'm going to sell them or bench them for fodder. And then I've got Doughty for now as my starting defender. Again, it's not really even about clean sheets for him either, but the attacking prowess that he offers, and hopefully with the match against Bournemouth, that there'll be opportunities for him if I was to start him. Onto the midfield, Foden against Crystal Palace. Yeah, there is a risk that he could get rotated, especially with the important Champions League match next week. So if he even gets like a cameo appearance, I'll have to take it. And then Mohamed Salah against Manchester United. We know what record he's got against them, and he'll be very integral to Liverpool, provided that he's fit. So I wouldn't want to captain either of them, but no doubt I'd have to start them. And then, as it stands right now, vice captain Son, captain Palmer. Purely from a form perspective, if I was going to attack the fixture, of course I'd reverse it. And it's I'm not going to really complain. Like Palmer is someone who I've wanted to captain, and I've always like hesitated again due to a number of different reasons, mainly due to Chelsea's consistency as a team has been quite like off the boil for the most part of this season, which has put me off from captaining him. But he's got a really fantastic record against newly promoted teams. Of course, he's on penalties, which have contributed to his fantastic goal tally, where he's now joint second Premier League top goal scorer. And of course, Chelsea as a team don't really have much to play for now between April and the end of the season. But I feel that with him, with the personal accolade up for grabs in terms of the Golden Boot and also a place as a starting option in the Euros, I've got no doubt that Palmer would want to finish on a high. So he is my bus captain for now. On to the strikers. Solanke against Luton Town, hopefully a fancy return there for him. Muniz against Newcastle United, tricky game potentially, but his form up until last week has been fantastic. And then Haaland against Crystal Palace. The fact he got benched during the week gives me hope that he might get some minutes against Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park. But again, I just couldn't consider him as a captaincy option, and possibly one that I'd even consider selling as well, but I'd need to give it some more thought. Onto my bench, Kaminsky against Bournemouth. I know it's a home fixture, but like I've said, clean sheets really come at a premium for Luton Town. And I'm already starting Doughty potentially. Garnacho sub one again, Liverpool at home. I'll probably give that another think after the form that he's been in, but it's a tricky match nonetheless. I've been lucky in not losing out on his points so far on the bench due to auto sub and bench boost, but yeah, that was just a bus option for now as being my sub one. So I'll see what happens. And then Zabani and Kirkez make up sub 2 and sub 3. And with both of those defenders, almost certainly I'd probably start both in double game week 34. But if Kirkez doesn't start in the next 2 games, then I might even have to sell him or just keep him as a bench option and hope that a single game week player actually benefits instead. But in terms of players that I'm looking to sub, because I've got 2 free transfers now. I did the -8 last week and managed to absorb it with the players that I purchased. So for this game week, in terms of my transfer options, I'm almost certainly going to be making a transfer. And I mentioned double game week 34. So this is the FPL.team planner here. So we know that Arsenal double in 34, as do Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, Everton, Liverpool as well, and Sheffield United and Wolves. So in terms of players that I could potentially purchase, so I do want to get double Arsenal defence ahead of the double game week, but I might wait until the eve of double game week 34, especially with the tricky 2 games they've got coming up. With Bournemouth, I've already got the triple up, but like I've said, might do some shifting around if needed if Kirkez doesn't start the next matches. Crystal Palace, yeah, it's really tricky games in the next 2, but then I could potentially get a Crystal Palace player on the eve of double game week 34. Who knows? And with Everton and the relegation fight that they're in, definitely an option. They've got something to play for. They've got Burnley at home and then Nottingham Forest at home in the next 3 plus the double. So I could potentially consider an Everton player, but then really, am I going to get Calvert-Lewin in? Is there any consistent Everton performer? I can't really think of any. And would I get an Everton defender? Probably not. So I'm not going to rush to get an Everton player in right now. Liverpool, to get the triple up, I'll probably go the easiest route, get in a defender. Bradley probably would make sense, or Kelleher if Alisson's not ready by then. And then, yeah, I'm not going to get any Sheffield United players. But the other double, the last one, Wolves, got West Ham at home, then Forest, then the double with Arsenal and Bournemouth, got Luton, and then they've got Crystal Palace in the penultimate game of the season. That seems like a generous run of games. And the one player that really sticks out for me is Ait Nouri of Wolves. And I didn't realize that he's playing in an advanced role in recent matches. And of course, he scored in the last game as well. So logic says that if I'm going to get a player for this game week, as well as the double, almost certainly it makes sense to get Ryan Ait Nouri in. So coming back to my team, who would I potentially sell? Kirkez, it'd probably be too soon to sell him right now. Doughty, yeah, I'm not going to sell him just yet. It'll be a real tricky fit to get him in, but I'll have a think. But I do want to get him in, and there's not really any other player. I mean, I could sell Doughty perhaps, but yeah, it'll be a very reluctant sell, especially ahead of the Bournemouth match, but I'll give it some thought. So on to the preview of games for game week 32. So Palace against City, you'd expect this to be a routine Manchester City win, but of course Champions League around the corner, and Crystal Palace have caused them problems in recent years. I will call it a narrow Man City win at Selhurst Park. Then on to Villa against Brentford. Of course, Villa was somewhat humbled against Manchester City during the week, but at the same time, if we take that match away, they've had a fantastic season, and in terms of where they are, they're still in a Champions League spot at the moment, and Brentford haven't really been that fantastic of late with no wins in the last 5. So I'll call that a narrow, Aston Villa win, and then on to Everton against Burnley. This is a really important match for both teams, with Burnley in 19th, Everton in 16th. I'll call it a Burnley defeat, purely because they've only won 1 in 5. And I know that Everton haven't won actually any in the last 5, but because of its importance, I think they'll just about nick a result here. And then on to Fulham against Newcastle. Well, with Newcastle United still on the still fighting for a Europa League spot at the very least, and with Fulham, who, despite the relatively reasonable form they've been in, they're only 13th place in the Premier League right now, and of course Newcastle won in the FA Cup against Fulham not that long ago either. I think that'll be in their muscle memory as well. I'll call that a narrow Newcastle United win. Luton against Bournemouth. Again, Luton, who have put in some interesting performances at home this season. They're really struggling. This is a real must-win match for them, because if Luton win and Forest lose, then potentially Luton could get out the relegation zone. And if Luton lose and Forest win, there's a 6-point gap. So it's a tough one. And then you've got Bournemouth, who are 12th, 4 wins in the last 5. I'm going to call it a Bournemouth win, albeit a narrow one. And then on to Wolves against West Ham. Both teams have had an interesting run of form of late, with Wolves only winning 2 in the last 5 and West Ham only winning 1 of the last 5. I'm going to call that a draw. I think they'll just cancel each other out. And then on to Brighton against Arsenal. It'll be a tricky match for Arsenal. No doubt they might rotate ahead of the Champions League, but I'm going to say that it's an Arsenal win there. On to the Sunday matches. United against Liverpool, massive match. And I think just due to the importance of it and also United's form, I think Liverpool might just have enough to edge them in this match. So I'll call it a Liverpool win. And Sheffield United against Chelsea. I mean, Sheffield United have just not been at the races this season. They're 20th for a reason, 10 points away from safety. And of course, Chelsea haven't had a great season either, but they've picked up some form of late. So I'll call that a Chelsea win. And then Spurs against Nottingham Forest. I think Spurs, who disappointingly, they're like good form, 3 wins in 5, but they really should have won like all 5 if you look at the fixtures that they've had. And with Nottingham Forest, they are just above the relegation zone, won the last match. I'm going to call it a narrow Spurs win. I think it's fairly tight based upon both teams and what they're fighting for. Now, looking at the captaincy polling data, I simply asked, who is the best FPL captain for game week 32? Again, no surprises really, albeit there were other contenders who could have been considered, but Palmer got more than half of the vote. Son, who had Palmer not been in the form that he's been in, could have been the option for the fixture alone, but only 20% opted for him, and just under a quarter backed Mohamed Salah. With that in mind, and also with Palmer's ownership in mind, I'm projecting that Cole Palmer's effective ownership among the elite managers and the top 100k will easily exceed 140%. And what that means is that if you choose a captain that blanks and he hauls, that it could massively damage your rank. But then again, there are upside opportunities elsewhere as well. But that is what the captaincy projections are saying based upon the polling data. So there you have it. Let me know in the comments below who you're going to buy for game week 32. And as always, if you can like, share and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. Take care and all the best.